This is part 3 of Common Sense Economics, section 2. When monopolies are present with high barriers to entry, markets will fail to achieve efficiency. So, let's go ahead and get started. So, we've kind of asked, when should something be provided? We've already talked about how the government should provide kind of this idea of law and order, right? Where people's property rights are going to be protected. People can expect that contracts are going to be enforced in an even-handed manner. And this enables people to have an incentive to actually go out and earn and produce and invest in their area because since they know that what they build is going to be produced, it's going to encourage them to produce more. Yeah. So we've talked about that already. We call that government's protective function. What we're going to talk about today is government's productive function, right? And this is the government actually providing goods and services. So we should ask then, okay, in economics, in this class that we've taken together so far, when do we provide something? When do we do something? When do we partake in an activity? Yeah, when do we produce something? When the benefits exceed the costs. Yeah. Whenever we're doing this, right, that's efficient, right? That's economic efficiency when you're getting more back from what you're putting in. Yeah. So when should the government do something? Those rules don't change, guys. The rules are still when the benefits exceed the costs. Okay. So as we get into what we're talking about today, there's different kinds of goods that we all provide. Some goods are provided by private markets. Some goods are provided by public markets. I guess not markets, but some goods are provided by private markets. Some goods and services are provided by public institutions like governments. Okay. So when we're looking at different kinds of goods, there's two traits that a good can have or cannot have, and that is excludability or rivalry. Okay. Excludability means that when I am selling it, I can prevent you from getting it. Yeah. So if I don't want you to have it, I can make it so you can't get it. Okay. Rivalry means that when I use it, it's rivalrous and you can't have it. Or me using it diminishes how much you get to use it. Or when I use it, when you use it, it's not too fun and exciting, right? So we got to be careful with these, right? Because sometimes you can make an argument that something would not be rivalrous when in reality it is. Something like roads, you may think, okay, me being on the road doesn't prevent someone else from using the road. But you being on the road makes the road less enjoyable for someone else, right? Man, I would love, when I'm going somewhere and the roads are super busy, I would love if none of those people were on the road, right? So roads, even though, I certainly can't exclude you, right? I can't exclude you from getting on the road, right? I guess we do that with driver's licenses, but I really, my experience is lessened when you are also on the road, right? Because it's rivalrous. So this is our idea of excludability and rivalrous. So let's get into each one of these types of goods because we can essentially have it be excludable and rivalrous. We can have it be not excludable, rivalrous. We can have it be not excludable and not rivalrous, or we can have it both be not excludable and not rivalrous. Oh boy, let's get into it. So the first kind of good we have is a private good. A private good is something that's excludable and rivalrous, meaning that I can prevent you from having it. Right? I can put it behind a glass window. I can put it behind a locked door. I can have one of those little arms that go up and down to prevent you from ow that hurt. I don't know why. I can have one of those little arms that go up and down that prevent you from going inside. Okay, I can exclude you from using it. Okay, and it's also rivalrous, meaning that when someone else uses it, you don't get to use it. Okay, so take all of these pastries, for instance, okay? They're excludable. They're behind a glass window. You're being prevented from using them. They're also rivalrous, right? I don't think you're going to want the donut after I eat the donut, okay? Interpret that however you would like to, okay? We also look at something like toll roads. Toll roads are excludable. You can prevent people from using them, and they're rivalrous, right? The more people there are on a toll road, the more congested it is, right? The less you like it, right? It's not as good as it was. Like your use is diminished when you have all these other people using it, right? It's rivalrous. Okay. Some people like to throw toll road under another type of good, which I think is incorrect, and we'll get to that because it's actually on an example of a graph that's made that I'll show you here soon. Okay. Then we have public goods, okay? And this is important because this is the actual definition of a public good. A public good is not something provided by the public, okay? People will often call something like a public school a public good, and it is not, okay? If you'll notice here, public school is actually a private good. It's excludable. We can close the doors and we cannot let you in. Yeah. If we don't want to give you the education, we don't have to give you the education that the school is providing. Okay. It's also rivalrous. Yeah. We can see that, if we throw 100 kids into a classroom, that teacher's not going to be able to teach and give, proper care and attention to all the students that are in that class. Right. So it is rivalrous as well. Public goods, we call them public goods because of their definition, okay? They are available to everybody, and we can't cut you off from using them, okay? But the good news is that when we provide it for one person, we provide it for everybody, and the use is not diminished, okay? So they are not excludable, and they are non-rivalrous, meaning we can't prevent you from getting the benefit of it. But the good news is that if we provide it for one person, we provide it for everybody, right? So one great example of public goods are street lamps. This is the one that a viewer always brings up, right? Street lights, okay? They're not excludable. Everyone gets to use the street light, okay? And they're non-rivalrous, yeah? When you get to have higher visibility with the street lamp, it doesn't make so I have less visibility, yeah? Or we have, as I have pictured here, the military, right? It's non-excludable. If we have the military protecting one person, right? If they're protecting me in my house, here in Indiana, then they're protecting everybody else in my area, right? It's not excludable, okay? They can't be like, well, Mr. Weaver, he didn't pay his taxes, so we're going to make it so his house in particular is open up to a drone strike, but everyone else around him is okay. No, right? If they're providing defense for everyone else around me, they got to provide it for me. They can't exclude me. And it's also non-rivalrous, right? If they're going to, defend, me in my house, that doesn't then make it so that they can't defend the other houses as well, right? So it's non-rivalrous. This is a relatively good example of a public good. And then we have a common resource. And we talked about these when we were talking about the tragedy of the commons, okay? This is where we have rivalry with no excludability, right? And I kind of hinted at this. I showed a picture earlier when we were talking about the tragedy of the commons where I looked at the different kinds of goods. But with this, we talked about the buffalo. Nobody owned the buffalo. No one could be prevented from killing buffalo, okay? Because they were all, nobody owned them, okay? They were just out in the wild, yeah? So everyone had an incentive to consume the buffalo, either for sport or for, getting food from, or we look at fishing out in the open seas. Nobody owns the fish out there, and that's actually why we see some overconsumption of fish because, well, no one owns those fish out there, right? If you try to breed any of those fish, someone else only has an incentive to consume those. So there's no, because it's not excludable, that no one owns it, right? So these are common resources. We have rivalry with no excludability, right? Meaning there's only an incentive to consume, right? This is different from private goods because they're rivalrous, sure, but there's also a reason to conserve, right? Because, there's a reason why they want to make more donuts because they can, keep them safe behind it. If they make some more, they don't have to worry about someone else coming along and taking them. Whereas if you try to breed more fish, someone else can just come along and take those fish from you, right? And then finally, ladies and gentlemen, we have what we call a natural monopoly. And natural monopolies exist when there is a good that is, or service that is provided that is excludable, but is non-rivalrous. Okay, where it's excludable, but it is non-rivalrous. Okay, think about something like power lines. Yeah, when you're getting power sent to your house, okay, you can have your power turned off, right? But it's not really non-rivalrous, at least not in the sense that we like to think about it, right? Sure, yes. Are you actually consuming something? Yeah, you're taking a little portion of some coal that's being burned and being turned into some steam and then being turned into some power as it turns a turbine. But it's if they're providing power for you, They're also providing power for me, okay? And it's also excludable, right? If you don't pay your power bill, they can turn it off, yeah? So this is a natural monopoly in the sense that, one firm can really do it as easy as, 100 firms. Matter of fact, you would argue that because you have to have all this infrastructure, it would make way more sense for there to just be one firm, okay? However, we know that when there's competition among many firms, it encourages those firms to continually decrease their cost and make better and better products, yeah? So it can be sometimes where we don't really find a lot of innovation, or there's really big jumps in innovation in these markets. And you'll also see governments try to take control of these, because the taxpayers of the area will be fearful that they'll be charging unfair prices, because if you're a monopoly, you don't have to try to have prices towards the market level, okay? So again, here's this little graph or table matrix that I was referring to, and you'll notice here they call the natural monopolies, they call them club goods, okay? And I also want you to notice here that they have cinemas here, right? And that's a really good example, because I want you to notice here that not everything that classifies as excludable and non-rivalrous is going to be classified as a natural monopoly, right? Because you can be excluded from going in to see a movie, right? But it is, non-rivalrous. You getting to see the movie doesn't, prevent all those from around you from seeing the movie. However, some of you that have been in a really crowded theater, maybe you could say that this is really a private good, because when there's more people inside, it does get kind of rivalrous. You're butting up against people, and it's some people are very loud movie watchers, and I like to have absolute silence. So maybe we could say it's rivalrous in that sense and move it up. And then if you look at cable television, this is a really good example. You'll notice that this is actually, in some areas there may only be one or maybe two providers of cable. Thankfully, now we've kind of moved to just serving internet towards people, and they just have things like Netflix. They don't really have cable television anymore. But that said, the people that provide the internet connections to these houses are most of the times people that used to provide cable. So I guess we're at a loss there. But anyways, cable television, right? As we have those lines, those fiber cables going down the street, if we have one company doing it, it's excludable, right? They can just say, okay, well, that house isn't going to get content. That house isn't going to get internet. That house isn't going to get the special package, right? They can exclude you if they want to, right? And it's also non-rivalrous, right? If I'm using the internet, it doesn't really prevent my neighbor from using the internet, right? So it's non-rivalrous in that sense. Anyways, let's go ahead and go on. Today's actually a very short day, because what we're talking about is, look at it here. We have a lot of competition. It looks like among power sources. That's going to be just a very mismanaged, power grid. But do you think that this picture illustrates us using our scarce resources effectively? Because it looks like we have a bunch of different energy companies, wiring all over the place here. This is what it would look like if we had a whole bunch of different power companies, right? Because imagine, going down the street, if you had, 10, like we have 10 restaurants in an area, right? What if we had 10 power suppliers in an area, right? And you had 10 separate power cables coming down the line. That'd be super inefficient. That'd be a waste of resources, right? And instead, what we could do as a society is just have one company bring one down, and they'd provide just as well as the 5, probably better, because it'd be more efficient. We wouldn't have as many lines, and we could actually use those lines that we were bringing down to take and to give power to other areas, right? So this is not an effective use of resources, because something like power is a natural monopoly. One company could actually do this more efficiently than multiple companies competing. However, there's also a monopoly when it comes to EpiPens. Do you think that one company making EpiPens is an effective use of scarce resources? Well, in this case, this is a private good. Okay, this is not a natural monopoly. Okay, this is not a natural monopoly. So you see, EpiPens, they are rivalrous. Yeah. Okay, so that's going to throw them in this top one here, Okay, so it's either going to be a private good or a common resource, and is it excludable? Can they prevent you from buying an EpiPen? Yes, they can. So it is a private good, right? So in this case, just like how there's multiple companies that sell ice cream and cheese and houses and cars, other companies could come in and compete, and that wouldn't make us any less efficient, right? We could still do it efficiently by having competition. But the good thing is we always, if we ever have an opportunity to have competition or not have competition, we want to take it, unless it's a natural monopoly, okay? We want to take it. Because that competition is going to lead to lower costs, which mean lower prices for us. Hey-o. It also leads to better products, okay? In this case, and to be honest, most cases, monopolies will exist because no one is allowed to compete. There are artificial barriers, okay? And this hurts economic efficiency, okay? So then monopolies, like with what happened with EpiPen, I think in 2017, maybe it was 2018, the producers of the EpiPen went from charging, I think it was like around $100 to charging almost $700 to buy an EpiPen, okay? And they can charge higher prices. They can lower the amounts that are supplied than what consumers want because there's no competition. No one can service that excess demand that consumers have. No one can try to beat them on a price because no one is allowed to. It's illegal to compete with something like an EpiPen because they have a patent. They have explicit permission from the government to be the only people that get to produce it. Okay, and that hurts economic efficiency. Yeah, and that's what makes and this is now it's not a market for EpiPens. It's just a person that's given the ability to sell EpiPens. Right? There's no competition. Okay, so there's no efficiency, and competition doesn't just also give us efficiency. It also gives us growth. Right? There's also been no growth in the EpiPen device because no one's allowed to really compete with it. Yeah, unless they find just a incredibly different way to deliver epinephrine in a quickly and convenient way. So that is going to do it for natural monopolies. Okay, we will start talking about in number 3. We will continue this idea of government's productive function. Okay, because today I kind of wanted to hit at monopolies are bad, but sometimes the government will want to provide them, right? Where they'll take over things like power companies because people won't trust the companies to keep the prices low, and no one can compete with them because they are a natural monopoly, right? It would be actually less efficient for these companies to pop up. So this falls under government's productive function. That'll be on our slides in the next section as we talk about some other things or other excuses that you could arrive at as to why the government should produce something. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you